And on this Friday morning, the Washington Journal is pleased to welcome Bob Woodward of the Washington Post here to talk with you about his latest book about presidential leadership in a time of war. It's called Obama's War. Mr. Woodward, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I watched you on Charlie Rose the other night, and as I was telling you at the break, I wanted to start our conversation with your very last thought on that program. I'm going to play it for our audience, and then going to pick up the conversation from there. Let's listen in.
Line here is we're on thin ice, and that not enough has been done to clarify and set the direction of a war, which will not, it's not just going to define in part the Obama presidency, it's going to define where this country is in 1 year, 2 years, 50 years.
Pretty big stuff that you're thinking we're at a pretty important crossroads of history. Will you tell me more?
Yes, because this war has been going on since 2001, longest war ever for this country. Right now, it's in trouble. This report released by Congress this week shows that it's not. And if you take, in the back of the book, I print the secret orders that President Obama issued to the military and his national security team, and he lists 4 criteria for evaluating progress. And there are 4 risk factors as they are identified. The first is Afghan governance in that war. Now we're dealing with Hamid Karzai, who, as I point out in the book, the intelligence shows is a manic depressive, on his meds, off his meds. A couple of weeks ago, he's out there crying in public. One day he says he's with us, the next day he's going after the United States. He is an unreliable partner. Second risk factor is the Afghan security force, and how are we training enough to get to the point that we can turn it over to them. In these secret debates in the White House, which I describe here, the military is pushing for a goal of training 400,000 Afghan soldiers and police. They keep bringing this goal back to the president. He just says, no, what's the evidence? Where does this come from? And finally, at the end, he just dismisses it and says, your presentation strains credulity. There are, in fact, attrition rates in the police and army sometimes that are higher than the recruitment rate. Third area is Pakistan, which is the powder keg of South Asia and in many ways the powder keg of the world. Weak government, all of these safe havens for Al-Qaeda and the Taliban extremists and insurgents, a country that has 100 nuclear weapons. Anyway, and the fourth area is international support. And as we know, that's on the wane. In this country, the criticism and doubt about the war is great. So you have a situation where the president has forged some consensus, got everyone to sign up to the strategy he developed, but sometimes you get a compromise where none really will work. And this may be the point we're at now.
I pulled the commentary page from the Washington Times this morning because there is a big piece written by Christopher Duquette with the headline, "Is Afghanistan Worth Winning?" You have a scene, one of the many, where President Obama had all the key advisors around the table, and the first question asked was the corollary, should we pull out? Does anyone around here believe we should leave? Everyone was silent. Why is Afghanistan worth pursuing it fundamentally?
Well, this is the question. I mean, it's Afghanistan, Pakistan. As the president says at one of these meetings, the cancer is in Pakistan, not Afghanistan. Vice President Biden makes a very compelling series of arguments that we should focus on Pakistan, that we have enough force, enough intelligence capability, and control of the air over Afghanistan that the Taliban cannot and will not come back.
There was a lot of discussion in Washington this week about your comments about Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden on the next ticket. I guess I'm wondering, you've been in this town a long time, you know what intrigues people. With all the substantive coverage in this book, were you surprised at how much attention and blowback there was about the contours of the next presidential race?
You know, it's reported in the book that one of her advisors, Mark Penn, told her, look, it may be in 2012 Obama's in trouble and he needs to put you, Hillary Clinton, on the vice presidential ticket. It's being kicked around. Look, it's politics, and if you look at the numbers, Hillary Clinton has strength with voter groups, workers, seniors, Latinos and women, and Obama may need them. Now that the White House is right, they're not talking about it now because they're worried about the November elections coming up. But after that, when they get into presidential election mode, as we know, in politics, people will do anything that's legitimate to win, and sometimes things that are illegitimate.
One of the things we're going to do during this program is show some clips, if we can, from prior books when you've been on the program. But before we get to that and to our calls, this is the list in the front of the current book, Obama's War, of past books. You seem fascinated. You can attack the presidency as a journalist from many different levels, but you seem regularly to go back to the concept of presidents and the Pentagon and the leadership around the war decision. Why does that aspect interest you?
Because it's so important. If you travel abroad, you discover we're defined by our wars. In many ways, I think the country is defined to itself by its wars. It is a serious moral choice always. People lose their lives. People are maimed. It is the defining undertaking for a nation state, and if you can look at, as I attempt to do here, exactly what Obama decides, how he works, who he listens to, what matters, how he loses his cool sometimes, even Barack Obama does. It's a window into who he is, and the message control in this White House, like the Clinton White House, the George W. Bush White House, is phenomenal. They eke out, you know, a few sentences, this is what happened, this is what's going on. Because I have 18 months, I'm able to do a total universe portrait, so in a sense, it's the Barack Obama you don't know and have not seen.
Well, let's look at one of those clips and then we'll go to calls. This is just from September of 2008, The War Within, one of your several on President Bush and the Iraq War, talking about the president's relationship with his generals. Let's listen in.
The problem is George Bush never really solved the dilemma of what is the interaction between the civilian end and the military end. He never had the generals, so they were close to him, so he knew what was going on. So this is all taking place at a distance or over secure video links to Baghdad, and there's not that moment I kind of call it a come to Jesus moment or meeting where he got everyone together and said, look, this is a mess.
Compare and contrast that with President Obama and the generals.
Well, of course, one of the themes here is the relationship between the civilian leadership and the uniformed military. And in the Obama case, as is laid out in great spreadsheet detail, as one reviewer said, you see the military resisting and saying, look, you have to send 40,000 troops. This was last year in the strategy review. You have to have kind of an open-ended commitment. President Obama did not buy that, and there are some electric moments where he confronts the generals and the Pentagon and says, look, you promised me 3 options and you're giving me essentially 1. Secretary Gates, Defense Secretary, finally says, yes, Mr. President, we owe you that option, but it never comes. The President has to take things from memos and things that Gates has said to come up with the 30,000 troops and a beginning, a vague beginning of drawdown next July. So it's cobbled together.